how does EQ affect our learning? How does emotional intelligence impact our learning? How does our emotional health, our emotional state impact our learning? What is going on, EQ gangsters? Hope this episode finds you doing amazing. And if it doesn't, that's also okay. I hope that it allows you to maybe give some new insights and perspectives on where you're at in your journey, in your personal and or professional growth journey, and also emotional growth journey. This episode is sponsored by, get ready, Filter It Through a Brain Cell podcast. What? Yes, my awesome wife just dropped her very first podcast. Now, it's very different than mine. Very different than mine. Hers are 5 minutes long. She is teaching people how to think. She's teaching people how to recognize logical fallacies. And she has basically one or two questions for each fallacy that you can ask yourself to help learn, grow, recognize any illogical thinking that you may see or you may do yourself. So definitely check it out. Filter It Through a Brain Cell on IG. filteritthroughabraincell.com is her website. And she's on all the major podcast platforms. She doesn't have a YouTube channel, so it's just audio, but she's got some great skin. Again, 5 minutes. They're also great for teens as well. filteritthroughabraincell.com. So I was sitting with one of my corporate clients, and thankfully, what a blessing, I've just added a couple new corporate clients. So super excited about that. So blessed to be able to do the work that I do. So incredibly fulfilling. And again, realize that I don't have a professional, I don't have a piece of paper that says that I'm good at what I do. I just saw one of my buddies, actually, check this out. He's a buddy of mine from Ranger School, y'all. Ranger School. He was actually one of my RIs, one of my Ranger instructors back in 97, which is old school. That's old school. I was a Winter Ranger, and he was going through. Fortunately, so check out how God works, y'all. This was so amazing. And we're going to get to the topic of the podcast here in just a second. Actually, I can make this a lesson too, because the topic of this podcast is learn. How does EQ affect our learning? How does emotional intelligence impact our learning? How does our emotional health, our emotional state impact our learning? There I was in Winter Ranger School. It was mountain phase. So there's 3 phases to Ranger School. There is the small unit tactics phase, where it's kind of the squad level, which is 9 or 10 folks in a squad, and you're doing missions, and that's in Dahlonega, Georgia. And you're learning different, is that in Dahlonega? Man, where was that first phase? I don't remember. I think maybe it was just at Benning in Columbus, Fort Benning, Georgia. So that was a few weeks, two and a half weeks, something like that. And then we did mountain phase. Mountain phase was the TVD, Tennessee Valley Divide, and that kind of little mountain range that runs through there. And not obviously not Rocky Mountains level, but still it was a lot of ups and downs. And we're in mountain phase, and I think that was probably the most challenging phase. All 3 phases were challenging for me, but mountain phase was probably the most challenging. And the dynamic that really was for me the most impactful was the cold, just dealing with bone chilling cold. Because the first 2.5, 3 weeks during the first phase in Georgia, it was like 33 degrees, and it would drop to between 33 and 31. And so it would alternate between snowing and sleeting basically every day. So you're out doing missions, you're doing patrols, that kind of thing. and you're, again, bone chill. And then of course you got to sleep in that because we're not staying in the Ritz Carlton, at night. We're staying in tents or hooches that we get set up. And so anyway, so now we're in mountains, and I'm droning. Droning means, for the civilians who are listening to this, and if you don't know what Ranger School is, just watch a couple YouTube videos on Ranger School and you'll get it. And we're getting ready to go out on this patrol, and I've got the radio that day. I'm carrying the radio in my rucksack. So I'm the RTO, radio telephone operator. And so I got the radio and I'm droning. We get very little sleep in Ranger School. And my Ranger buddy is an awesome guy named Mike. I won't share his last name because he kind of still does a little bit of secret squirrel stuff. And he was from Ranger Regiment, which is a very, very elite unit. I was from the 82nd, which is kind of a more conventional unit. Ranger Regiment is kind of a whole different ball game, whole different level. And, and he's a small guy. He's probably, I don't know, 5'5", maybe. He was maybe $170 soaking wet, and I'm 6'1" and, probably 220 at that time. And he picked me to be his Ranger buddy. And I didn't know him from Adam's House Cat. And I'm like, dude, why did you pick me to be a Ranger buddy? He said, look at you, man. You know how warm you're going to keep me at night? When we cuddle, and do Ranger spooning, when we're in our fighting positions and stuff. So anyway, it was hilarious. So he's a great guy. So again, really good buddy. And so we're out on this patrol, and I've got the radio, and I ended up being one of the last guys out of the patrol. We're going on this patrol, leaving the patrol base. We're kind of on the top of this ridge line, and we're going back down the ridge on this kind of leader's recon. It wasn't like a full mission. It was kind of leader's recon to get ready for our actual mission. And Mike, my Ranger buddy, was in front of me. Well, we have to, RIs have to count you out of the patrol base. It's a safety issue to make sure that there's no Rangers that have fallen asleep, or they're left back in the patrol base, or if they're droning too hard and they went a completely different direction, which all has happened. And so then, and I'm actually, Mike is in front of me. So I'm the last guy to get counted out of the patrol. And, we keep a decent distance, maybe 15, 20 feet between each guy as we're getting counted out of the patrol base. So we're not getting all bunched up in getting counted out of the patrol base. And as we're again, the patrol is kind of moving out. All of a sudden I see Mike stop, and the RI start talking. So they did an RI shift changeover. So it's a new set of RIs, Ranger instructors in the mountain phase. Maybe mountain phase was Dahlonega. I think mountain phase was Dahlonega, now that I think about it. And so we're, and I'm still standing, I'm in the patrol base still. The patrol has already moved out, and Mike, my Ranger buddy, is talking to this RI, and I'm 20 feet behind him, just kind of waiting, like, dude, what's going on here? Why is he, and Mike is super squared away. Like, he's from Ranger Regiment. I know he's going to smoke this school, which is great for me because he picked me, and it's like a super stud picking me to be his Ranger buddy. So he helped me out a lot through Ranger School. Anyway, they're talking for a little bit, and the patrol is still going. They're moved out. They've moved out. And I'm like, snap. I'm thinking, Mike, dude, we're going to get lost back here in the patrol base talking to this RI. Like, we got to catch up to the patrol. Mike kind of turns around, has this little grin on his face, and I'm like, man, what is he smiling about? Normally you're not grinning when you talk to an RI. And so he kind of motions me to come up to him. So I come up to him, and I said, I'm like, hey, hey, Sergeant, what's up? Ranger, as the Ranger instructor. And he hands me, a moon pie, y'all, a chocolate covered moon pie. Now, you guys may think, well, that's kind of lame. Why would he give you a moon pie? Food is a high value commodity in Ranger School because you typically eat 2 times a day. And, many meals, we had 5 minutes or 10 minutes to consume our meal, and our entire meal. And Now, if we did good on a patrol, maybe they'd give us a little extra time to eat. And sometimes we would eat right when we went to bed, and then 2 hours later when we wake up, we'd eat breakfast. So we'd eat dinner at, let's say, 02 when we got back in from our mission and stuff and doing priorities of work. And then 2 hours later, we would wake up and have breakfast, right? Eat our MRE meal ready to eat in a bag. And then that was it for the day. And, we're doing 20-hour days, 22-hour days, again, depending on whether or not we did a good job on the mission. So him handing me a moon pie, like I almost got to sprout out a tear. Y'all, food deprivation and sleep deprivation is a real thing, y'all. It is real. But now when I saw that moon pie coming at me, right when he was, reaching his hand, this is the RI handing me his moon pie, and I thought, oh, he's testing me. He's going to see if I'm going to give in, because I don't want to be Slim Shady and like, oh yeah, hey, give me this moon pie and screw all my buddies because I didn't get a moon pie. Because they didn't get a moon pie, and so I'm like, I'm just looking at it, looking at him, looking at the moon pie, looking at him, drooling, looking at then I look back at him, look back at the moon pie, drool some more, look back at him. And he's like, no, take it. And I look over at Mike's hands and he's already got his moon pie. And I was like, he's not like, what's going on? And he's like, and then he leans in, and this is where he told me the secret. He said, hey, Ranger. He said, I was Mike's squad leader in Ranger Battalion. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you, Jesus, for this angel from God, this RI who's hooking me up with a moon pie right now, who happened to be my Ranger buddy's squad leader in the unit that he had just come from, that Mike had just come from. And so that, like, he, like, I won't share anymore, but he gave us a serious homie hookup. That particular patrol that I will forever be grateful. And then how God works, so then of course I graduate, me and my buddy Mike, we graduate Ranger School, class 3-97 in March of 1997. And I go back to the 82nd Airborne Division. Actually, I go to, because this was all before my unit, before I go into my unit. So I get stationed in the 82nd Airborne Division and 1st of the 325 Bravo Company as a rifle platoon leader. Then boom, did that for a little bit, then went to Egypt. Then after that, I was a scout platoon leader. And while in scout platoon, boom, who ends up in my unit was my RI. And if you got to link up with this guy on LinkedIn. He's a super guy. He retired as a sergeant major in the Army. His name is Dale Roberts. Dale Roberts. He's on LinkedIn. Wonderful guy. Again, 20 plus years in the Army, serving our country. And it has been really neat to learn from him, not just in the military, like at Ranger School and in the 82nd, but also post-military. And he's got some really great insights. And again, he has been leading men and soldiers for over 2 decades. And he's getting further professional development. He's getting, I think, his master's degree or something. And so it's just been great learning from him, again, multiple times, which, again, this is part of the lesson today, is how tuned in are you to learning? How tuned in are you? Are you, my coaching client today, so when I was working with the executive today, this big leader that I was working with today, I asked him, I said, so, you've been in this particular position that you've been in for 2 years now. What leadership insights have you learned? And so here's some questions to ask yourself. What have you learned from however long you've been working in your particular job? What leadership insights have you learned? Take some time to write those down. What have you learned about leadership? Next question, What have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about yourself? Next question, what have you learned about yourself as a leader? Now, that previous question and this question are different. What have you learned about yourself as a leader? Next question, what have you learned about other people? What insights have you learned about people? And let's break that one down even further. What insights have you learned about the different generations of people that you're leading? Is the same type of leadership effective with the older generation, the middle generation, the younger generation? Do you use one size fits all leadership? How does your leadership change based on who you're leading? And here's another great question. How great are you at leading yourself? What lessons have you learned about leading yourself? When you get an opportunity, maybe you're watching on a YouTube channel, maybe you're listening to on a podcast, but just you may want to pause this or go back through when you've got a chance to sit down and write down some of these questions and reflect on them. Maybe use some of these questions during your quiet time, journaling time, reflection time. Put these questions in your journal, and maybe these are questions you kind of go back through once a month, once a quarter, and figure out and spend some time going through these questions. How intentional are you at learning? How does your emotional intelligence impact your learning? For me, learning is a strength of mine. I sometimes I'll reference myself as a professional learner. How intentional are you at learning? When do you learn the best? How do you learn? Are you auditory? Are you visual? I know some people that just watch the YouTube channel that I've got. Some people just listen to the podcast. Are you audio? Are you visual? Are you kinesthetic? Do you need to move? Do you need to take notes while you're listening, while you're watching, to really dial in those leadership lessons, those emotional intelligence lessons? How intentional are you from learning from your successes? How intentional are you from learning from your failures? How often do you repeat the same mistake over and over and over again? This is one in terms of emotional growth. If you, every time you get triggered, right now we're doing a Tame Your Trigger challenge. We had 105 people sign up, y'all. I was so excited. 105 people signed up for the Tame Your Trigger challenge, and a third showed up. So we had 33 yesterday, 32 today, or I'm sorry, 33 Monday, 32 Tuesday. Today is day 3 of the challenge. So by the time this gets published, the challenge will already be over. And it's been awesome helping these folks through. But how so when you get triggered, and let's say you go to an emotional 10, okay, well, if every time you get triggered and you go to a 10 every time, you're not learning or growing or healing in between those triggers. Each time, so 2 things should be happening if you are actually healing and growing emotionally. If every time you get triggered, so number 1, the frequency of times that you get triggered should start to drop, and the intensity of each time you get triggered should start to drop. Now, expectation management, that may take 3 years to do that. It may take 2 years. It may take a year. It may take 6 months. It just depends on how intentional you are. If you don't change, nothing will. If you don't do emotional work, let me tell you where your emotional state is going to be 6 to 12 months from now. It will be worse. You may not recognize it. It may not reveal itself yet at that time. You may think, oh, not me, Noble. My emotional state has been steady my entire life. Just give it some time. Unaddressed emotional issues do not get better over time. They actually compound. So again, you may not be aware of it, but those emotional injuries are building and building and building unless you take the intentional time to go in and do some good, deep emotional work. And as I say frequently, if you need professional help, seek it out. Go find a counselor, a therapist, a psychologist, psychiatrist, somebody that you can sit down with that can help you work through some of those more intense trauma or emotional injuries that you've been through. Because again, I'm telling you, y'all, stuffing and avoiding is not healthy or productive. So how does your EQ, wherever that is, how does your emotional intelligence, how do your emotional health and your emotional state, how does it impact your ability to learn? And I just want to encourage you to be as intentional with your successes, learning from your successes, as you do your failures. How intentional are you at learning from your failures? Right, I already asked that one. How intentional are you? Do you have how do you capture your lessons? Do you capture them? Are you writing notes down? When I asked the guy today, 2 years on the job, and I asked him, what are some leadership insights you've gleaned? Man, I can't think of any. And as a learner, that's like, whoo, that's heartbreaking. That's heartbreaking. And he is in charge of a truckload of people and resources, and it's a little bit heartbreaking. So I want to just encourage you, man, make learning a priority. And I think that as you get healthier emotionally, what happens is you start to increase your emotional bandwidth, capacity, and agility, which also will then increase your ability to learn more effectively, learn more. Quantity and also quality of learning will also increase based on my personal experience. So thank you for being a part of this emotional growth journey with me. If you have been a part of our Tame Your Triggers Challenge, thank you. Thank you if you have referred some folks to the EQ Gangster, EQgangster.com website, podcast, YouTube channel. Thank you for rating and reviewing. If I've added any kind of value, man, it would really mean a lot if you would just take 15 to 20 seconds to just give a rating on the podcast platform that you're listening to, and give us a review. Totally appreciate that. Again, thank you for letting me be a part of your journey and for you all being a part of my journey. Remember, emotionally healthy people help heal other people emotionally. Emotionally healthy leaders create emotionally healthy cultures and organizations, which create and maximize and optimize outcomes and results.